What's up everybody, welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 mini-series about basic AI. So in the previous video we made our little enemy chases, but he's not really doing anything, he's just standing there. So in this episode we're going to make sure he whips out his sword and attacks us. So let's have a go at that. First of all, we need an animation for that, so let's pick one. Let's go to the mesh we selected earlier, go to the animations we have available, and let's have a look. Well, that looks fine to me, so I'm just going to use this first attack animation, browse to asset, and minimize it. So over here, I want to right click it, create an animation montage. No need to rename it, that's fine. I'm going to move it to my AI folder, just for organization's sake. Now let's go back to our skeleton. We need to add an animation slot. So on the right here we have the animation slot manager. If you don't see it, simply go to the window menu over here and select it so it pops up. And we need to add a slot. So click the add slot and call this upper body. Just like this, and that's all we need to do really. So save it and we can close it down. Now we need to open up the animation montage we just created, so go to the correct folder and open it. Now over here for the default group default slot, you want to select this little drop down menu and set it to the upper body slot we just created. So select this one. Now the animation is going to stop playing. If you drag the timeline a little bit, it'll fix it. Nothing really bad happened, so that's fine. Save it and we can close it down. Now let's save the skeleton as well, because we created the slot on there, so we have everything saved. Next thing we need to do is go to our animation graph, I think. Let me double check quickly. Well, it might be easier if we go to our our enemy blueprint first. So let's open up the enemy blueprint, and we need a new variable in here. So add a new variable and call this isAttacking. It's a boolean, that's fine. We're not going to do anything with it right now, but we need to access it from our animation blueprint. So let's open that up. First of all, in the event graph, add the same variable as well. So add a new variable and call this isAttacking. That's the boolean, so that's still fine. Now from the pawn owner, we want to drag off here and cast it to our enemy. Cast to enemy blueprint, because that's the enemy we are using. So connect it to the execution pin. And now as the enemy blueprint, we want to get our isAttacking boolean and make sure we save it in our animation blueprint as well. So drag in as setter and connect them up. So that's fixed. Now go to the animation graph and we need to disconnect this. Select your state machine and copy it twice. So we have 3 of them, 3 exactly the same. Now right click in an empty spot and we need to look for the layered blend per bone. So pick this node, layered blend per bone. For the base pose you can simply connect up one of the state machines, doesn't matter which one. Select another state machine, drag off here and look for a slot node. Select that one. Now with the slot node selected, go to the details panel and you want to set it to the upper body slot. Select upper body and connect this to the blend pose. Now let's get ourselves a blend per bool. So right click and look for blend per bool. Blend poses by bool, I'm sorry. Now for this we are going to attach our isAttacking boolean. If we are attacking, so that's the true pose, we want to set it to our layered blend, and if we are not attacking, we are simply going to use our state machine and connect this to the output pose. Now all we need to do here is set up the layered blend per bone. So select this node and go to the details panel. In the layer setup you want to add 3 branch filters. So click the little plus sign over here 3 times. For the first branch filter the bone name is going to be spine 01. And the blend depth is going to be 3. For the second branch filter the bone name is going to be thigh right. And the blend depth is going to be -1. And the last one is thigh left. And the blend depth is going to be -1 again. So what this node does is blend the animation so it only plays on the top half of the body, and the lower body plays the default locomotion animations. So we can run and attack at the same time, or we can be idle and attack at the same time, but we don't need any different animations for it. We simply blend them. So that's what this node does. So we got the animation blueprint set up and we should be good to go over here. Let's compile and save this. And go back to our enemy blueprint. So open this up. First in the viewport we need to add a few things. So to make our lives a little bit easier, I'm going to select the mesh and get rid of the animation. So instead of using an anim blueprint, I'm going to set it to animation asset and simply do not select the animation to play. Now I want to add some box collisions to this and I want to attach them to the mesh. So select the mesh and click add component, look for box collision. And I'm going to name this first one sword collision left. Over in the details panel we can attach it to a socket. So click the little searchlight over here and look for the weapon left socket. Weapon left. And now we need to resize this a little bit so it fits over the blade of our sword. So let's reposition this. And let's resize it. So let's make it like 3 big or 3 wide. It can be a bit longer. So how about 70? That looks fine. Make it a little bit smaller. Go for 20 over here. That looks fine to me. Now let's rotate it. I think I want to angle it up a little bit as well. Something like this. Reposition it a little bit better. And that's fine for now. So we got 3, 70, 20. Let's keep those in mind. Let's do the same thing for the left sword. So again, select the mesh and add a component box collision. Name this one sword collision right. And attach it to the right weapon or the right sword. So look for weapon right. And let's resize it. So we got 370 in 20. Let's move it up a little bit. Rotate it. So something like that should work fine for now. So you can spend as much time as you want perfecting this. For the sake of this video, this should work fine. So I'm going to add one last box collision, but I'm going to add it to the capsule component this time. So select the capsule component, add a new component box collision. And for this one I'm going to name it attack range. And I'm going to position it in front of the enemy. So let's see, why is my capsule component not visible? There we go. So let's move it in front of him a bit. I'm going to resize it so it's a bit bigger. Let's make it 45. Something like this. Can be a bit wider as well. Let's go for 60 in here. Doesn't really matter as long as it's covering most of the area in front of him. So I think we're good here. Compile and save this. Now let's add some code for this. Let's scroll down in my notes a bit quickly. Let's go to our event graph and add some variables first. So we already added our isAttacking boolean, and we're going to add 3 more. The first one is going to be canAttack. And then we're going to add 1 for each sword, can hit left, and also can hit right. So we have 4 new booleans to work with. And next we need overlap events for our attack range. So select the attack range in the components panel over here and scroll down on the right side. You can select the onComponent begin overlap event. And we also want to use the end overlap event. So select both of those. Let's start with the begin overlap first. We want to add a branch over here. So hold B on your keyboard and click. And we want to know if the actor we just overlapped is the same as our enemy. So drag off other actor and look for equal. Simply connect up my enemy to this one. Now for just safeguard's sake, I'm going to use an AND here, and I'm going to double check if I'm not already attacking. So if this boolean is true, I'm already playing an attack animation. So for example, if I start the animation, the player walks out of the trigger, and then I start following him, and the player gets back into the trigger before the animation ends. I don't want it to start the new animation. I want it to finish the animation that's already playing. So I'm going to add this little check over here. So let's double check we are not already attacking. And connect it up to the branch. So if this is true, we are good to go, and we are going to set canAttack to true. So drag in our setter for canAttack and set it to true. And we are also going to set isAttacking to true. So another setter, and set both of them to true. After that, we are going to play the animation. So drag off here and look for play anim montage. Select this node, play montage. For the skeletal mesh component, that's simply going to be our mesh. So select it from the components and drag it in. The montage is going to be the attack montage we selected earlier or created earlier. And the rest of the settings are fine, so just leave them. Now we're going to continue from the onCompleted pin, and the first thing we're going to do is set the isAttacking boolean to false. So drag in a setter, connect it up to onCompleted, and make sure it's set to false. Next, create a branch, and we want to check if we can continue attacking. So simply connect up the canAttack to the branch over here. And if we can, we're going to loop back to the beginning. Well, not really the beginning, but we are going to loop back to the isAttacking setter over here. So leave the canAttack out of the loop and go back to the second boolean before the play montage. So in the end, it looks like this. That should be good. So we are going to go to the end overlap event here. And let's copy the branch with the enemy check and paste them over here. So again, we want to check if the other actor is our enemy, and I'm also going to double check again if the can attack boolean is already true. So let's drag it on here, connect it up to the branch, and if that's true, I'm going to set can attack to false. So simply drag in our setter and make sure it's set to false. So if the player exits our attack range trigger, the can attack boolean is set to false, so this branch will go to the false execution and it will stop playing the attack animation. So that's how this should work. I guess at this point we can give it a go and see if the animation is playing or not. So let's do that quickly. Let's cross our fingers. Oh, I forgot something. Let's go to the viewport from our enemy blueprint. So we disabled the animation blueprint in here. So let's go to the animation mode again and set it to use animation blueprint. So we have anims going. Now cross your fingers. There we go. So we have an animation playing. He can run after us and still play the animation. And he can stand still and attack as well. So we have that part working. Now to make sure he actually does damage to us, we are going to use a few tricks in the books. So first of all, let's go to the animation montage and we're going to add notifies. So open our attack montage and let's drag the timeline over here. So I want to make sure the sword only does damage when it's actually swinging. So not if we are walking right next to him or he's turning and we're walking into him and the box collision contacts us. I don't want to take damage. I simply want the sword to deal damage only when it's swinging. So I'm going to make the sword swing start over here. So set the timeline to this position and simply right click over here and say add notify, new notify. And I'm going to call this, let's call it start swing right, because that's the right sword. So start swing right. And when the swing is done, I want to disable the trigger again. So let's go something here. When the swing is definitely done, right click again and add a new notify. And let's call this end swing right. So only in between these frames the sword can actually deal damage to the player. So that's how we are going to use it. So save it and close it down. And let's go to our animation blueprint. I think, is that a smart idea? Yeah, that should work. So let's go to the animation blueprint and to the event graph. And first let's add events for the notifies. So right click and simply search for notify. And you're going to see the ones we just created. So event animation notify start swing right. And also add the end swing right. Now for these we are simply going to set one of the variables on the player. So we're going to get the pawn owner and cast to the enemy. So copy those two nodes. And as the enemy for the start swing, we want to enable the can hit right. So we're going to say that can hit right. And simply set this to true. And just copy all of this, paste it to the end swing. And make sure you set can hit right to false again. So that's all we need to do with the notifies. And I think that's all we need to do in the animation blueprint as well. So let's compile and save this. And go to our third person character blueprint. So that's the player blueprint. And we are going to add a health variable quickly so we can see if he is actually hitting us. So let's add a variable health. Let's make it a float. Compile it and give it a default value of 100. And let's add a little take damage event in here. So let's create a custom event. And I'm going to call it take damage. So this is really simple just for demonstration's sake. There's lots of ways you can do this by using interfaces. There's a damage functionality built into the engine as well, I think. There's lots of ways to do this, but I simply want to show it's working and we can attack our player. So that's all we're doing here. So it's going to be really basic. So take damage, it's going to have an input. So select it and give it an input. It's called amount and it's a float. And we are going to set the new health value. So drag in a setter for our health, connect it up to the execution pin. Also get a getter, drag off here and type minus float minus float. And we want to subtract the amount and set our health value to that. After this, we're going to add a branch. Oh, come on. And we want to know if our health is bigger than 0. So if float is greater than float. If it's still greater than 0, we are simply going to print the health on screen. So let's go with print string. And let's give it like a greenish color so it stands out. Let's print it a little bit longer, 4 seconds, and I want to print the guy's health. So let's, oh come on. Let's connect up the health like this. And if it's false, I'm simply going to print you're dead. So if my health gets below 0, I'm dead. Nothing fancy, that's all we can do in here for now. So that's fine. We can see it's connecting to the player and we can respond to that. That's all we need to know. Now go back to our enemy blueprint and let's finish this up. So we want to go to the sword collision right because it's using the right sword over here. And let's add a on component begin overlap event. Now we want to add a branch here again and we want to make sure we hit our enemy, so that's the player. So copy the stuff from the previous event. Let's connect up the other actor to the asset over here and make sure we actually hit our enemy. And we also want to double check if can hit right is enabled. So let's look for and drag in our can hit right. So can we actually damage the player at this point? So that's taken care of from the animation blueprint with the notify. That's why it's not set in here. We are only checking for it. If this is true, we can attack. So the first thing we are going to do is set can hit right back to false. So we can only apply damage once per sword swing. So it doesn't keep applying damage as long as we hit the player. And the next thing we are going to do is simply drag in our get enemy or my enemy and call the take damage function. Connect it up to the execution pin and we can fill in the amount of damage we want to apply here. So let's make it like 35 so we can get hit twice and the third time we are done for. So I think this should work right now. So when the collision box for the sword is in the animation and the can hit right is true and it's overlapping the player, it's going to call the take damage event on the player And this only happens once because we set the can hit right back to false immediately, so we're blocking off this execution. Let's see if this is working. There we go, 65, 30, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead. So that's how you can make an enemy attack a player and make him apply damage. And as you can see with the blend per bone, he can walk and swing at the same time. But he can also stand still and swing, so the animation is simply blending. So that's a pretty useful way of doing it, I guess. So we are done for this video. In the next video we are going to make sure we can kill this guy and get rid of him. So we are going to apply damage to our AI and we are going to let him die. Okay, thanks for watching everybody. Talk to you later. Bye bye.